Okay, recording starting. Rolling into the Brunswick's best intro. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, you didn't know?
Hi, this is Tommy Kramer, and I'm here on a podcast for the Vikings Uncensored. That's us, Uncensored.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Brunswick's Best, where Lance takes a look at the greatest players in Vikings history. Tonight, spotlighting the players who have worn the number 9 for the Vikings. So as you saw from our intro there, you probably have a good idea of who the main guy is. Was kind enough to do a shout out for us here a year or so ago. But without further ado, why don't you take it away, Lance, and tell us about number 9?
Man, I love that I get to talk about 2-Minute Tommy tonight. I'm glad that he's the king of this number basically for our team. This is Tommy's number, of course. I hope he watches this because I know he has watched us in the past and he knows of us. So, Tommy, if you're watching, hi, I love you. I wish I could have been a little bit older so I could have watched you more growing up. I mean, I was born in 85, so that was at the tail end of your career. But
Tommy Kramer's my favorite offensive player to ever play for the Vikings. I mean, above Randy Moss, above Chris Carter, above all those guys, Tommy Kramer was the guy when I first was old enough to start watching football about 1980. It was right after he was drafted in 77, came in after Tarkenton became the quarterback, and right about that time where I started understanding football, and I always remember watching Tommy Kramer. And I've met him 3 or 4 times. I caught a pass from him once when I was in high school. He was doing a promo thing for one of the car dealerships up here in Fargo. I literally had a bruise on my shoulder for over a week where that ball hit me, but I caught it.
That's so awesome.
Funniest thing with that, there was a kid about 2 or 3 in front of me in the row when we were doing that. And when the kids would come up, Tommy would say, "You want a short pass? You want to go deep?" This kid goes, "I want to go deep." So kid takes off and Tommy rears back and he's sitting back there, lets the ball go and fly. And the kid looks over his shoulder, comes down, catches the pass, and turns around and runs full speed into a light pole. Just boom! Down on his back he goes. I just always remember Tommy go, "Oh, shit, I bet that hurt."
What a perfect moment for him, too. I mean, that's fantastic.
I mean, that's something I'm going to remember till the day I die. It was awesome. And like I said, Tommy does so much stuff with the fans, going to the bars and things like that and meeting up with he comes to Fargo quite a bit. So
approachable. It's amazing.
He is. I've had beers with him and stuff. I mean, he's just a genuine great dude. And
I would love, Tommy, if you're out there, we would love to have you on the show.
Oh, absolutely. So, but anyway,
like I said, I can't wait to divulge this little bit I got here for you about Tommy. But before I do that, I am going to mention briefly 2 other guys that wore the number 9 that played here. The first guy being Chicago's washed-up quarterback and Jim McMahon. He played here, I think it was the 94 season, I believe.
No, 95, I think it was. Because 94 was a moon year.
Okay. So
I can't remember. Was he before moon? Was he before moon, or was he? I think he was before moon, wasn't he?
Man, I was in at the time, but I definitely watched. But
I think it was. It might have been. I think it might have been 92, 91 or 92.
Okay. Well, anyways,
don't quote me on that, but.
Right. Don't quote either of us on that because we're not sure. I mean, eventually your years just kind of blumbled together.
I know, but I don't remember the year off the top of my head. Right. But I think he was before moon, so yeah.
One of his plays that I remember him being here was a famous play to end the game, and he ended up tossing it to Carter for the game winner. I think it might have even been against Chicago, rolling out and heaving it up, and Carter coming down with it and getting the touchdown. That was a great memory that I have from childhood, and McMahon happened to be the quarterback at the time. My next guy is none other than Brooks Bollinger, who had no business being a backup quarterback on anybody's team, but he was here. And
pride of University of North Dakota.
Yep. He
brother up
the game. He ended up starting a couple games for us, and one of those games was the game that Adrian Peterson went out and broke the rushing record in a single game during his rookie year. And that's still in my mind, a very fresh memory to me. But Peterson ran all over San Diego that day, and it was amazing. He ran all over Chicago that year, too, which was an amazing game, too. Along with every other team in the league, he ended up burning over at one point in time. So, anyways, Brooks, you were the quarterback during that game, and it was a hell of a game for Peterson in his rookie year, and I suppose I better give you a mention there. But even though with the mention of those two guys, this night is not about those guys compared to the story I'm about to tell. So sit down, crack one open, relax, and listen to Brunswick speak. Here we go. 2-Minute Tommy. Tommy Kramer. 2-Minute Tommy was already a legend before entering the NFL and taking his first snap. Kramer played his high school football at Robert E. Lee High down in good old San Antonio. During his 2 years playing varsity football at Lee High, Kramer would go on to lead his team to one state title in the 1971 season and then to the state semifinals the following season. Now, the 71 state championship game was played in the new Texas Stadium in Irving, Texas. Kramer guided the Lee High Volunteers to a 28-27 victory, which has been hailed by many as the best high school game ever played in the state of Texas.
And that's saying something.
Absolutely. Football is religion down there in Texas.
Absolutely it is, yeah.
So there were two other prominent athletes that were teammates of Tommy's in his time at Lee High. One of whom was Richard Osborne, who played for the Eagles, and the other was Pat Roquette, who played in the MLB for the Atlanta Braves. So that team was a decent team. Had some good athletes on it.
Mm-hmm.
During his 2 years on varsity for the Vols, Kramer led them to a 27-1 record, a 26-1 record. Honestly, on him, because he did miss a game. In an era where most high school teams were running the ball behind the wishbone and the veer, the Lee Volunteers achieved success throwing the ball. Making his varsity debut in that 71 high school season after replacing the original starting quarterback, he rallied the Volunteers to a 7-3 victory over Alamo Heights on a rainy night. It is here that he acquired the nickname 2-Minute Tommy, which stuck on him for the rest of his football career. 2-Minute Tommy went on to break the state passing yards record at the time, cementing his status in Texas high school football. Now, Tommy went on to become one of the many to come out of San Antonio to play collegiately for Rice University. Tommy went on to quarterback and lead the Owls in passing for 4 straight seasons. And the season marks he set went on to be the standard at Rice for the next 30 years. 2-Minute Tommy left Rice holding and setting many school quarterback records. He was the 76 George Martin Award winner as Rice's MVP for that season. Tommy also went on to be elected into the Rice Athletic Hall of Fame in 1984. Kramer played in the Senior Bowl in that 76 season, in which he was also named the Senior Bowl MVP, along with winning the Sammy Baugh Trophy, Fort Worth Kiwanis Sportsmanship Award, and was also a consensus. Thank you. Consensus All-American that same year. That 1976 season and the 77 season were amazing for Tommy. And that Senior Bowl MVP and the Sammy Baugh Trophy really elevated his draft stock, I think, leading up into the NFL. In 2012, the legend that was known as 2-Minute Tommy continued and cut that out. Okay. In 2012, the legend that was known as 2-Minute Tommy was elected into the College Football Hall of Fame. But we are getting ahead of ourselves here. After cementing himself in college football lore, Tommy entered the 1977 NFL Draft. On the exploding onto scouts' radars after that 76 season at Rice, TK was selected by the Purple and Gold up in cold Minnesota with the 27th overall pick in the first round of the 1977 draft.
And a interesting little trivia tidbit there. Green Bay was going to, I think they were picking like 29 or something like that. Green Bay was going to take him. Minnesota jumped him and took Tommy before he could go to the Packers, which
that's awesome. Good knowledge. But yeah, I did mention he had a good 77 season in that in the college, but obviously that's the year he got drafted, so excuse that little farce from before. Tommy wasn't brought into Minnesota with the expectations of having to start. Just wait. Another cue. I had to move down to my right up here.
That's fine.
Okay. And we're going to go. Okay. Tommy wasn't brought into Minnesota with expectations of having to start right off the bat. Tommy was able to sit behind one of the best to play the game, someone we will actually be talking about in next week's Brunswick's Best, and that is none other than Fran the Man Tarkenton. Tommy appeared in 5 games with 1 start, and 4 of which were actually mop-up duty for Fran. Tarkenton would go on to get injured later on in that season, but not throwing Tommy to the fire, they decided to ride with veteran Bob Lee. In the 12th game of that season, his rookie year, Minnesota trailed the 49ers 24-7. In the 4th quarter, and Kramer was brought in to replace Lee. He went 9 of 13 for 188 yards and 3 touchdowns to win the game 28-27 fittingly. That following Sunday, TK went on to make that only start he had in his rookie year against none other than the Raiders. He went 16 of 34 for 177 yards with a touchdown and 3 interceptions in the 35-13 loss. Tommy spent the 78 season once again playing mop-up duty for Tarkenton, as Fran would go on to start every game that year. In the 79 season, things were about to change. Kramer would become fully installed as the Vikings starter. He earned the nickname, as we all know, 2-Minute Tommy, for his reputation with comebacks. He would go on to lead the Vikings to 19 comebacks, along with one of them being in the playoffs. With 15 in the 4th quarter, with 1980 and 1985 having 4 from Kramer in each year. Unfortunately, Kramer would be plagued with injuries in his 11 seasons spent in the purple and gold, starting 109 of a possible 152 games for the team during his career with the Vikings. He started each game of a season just twice, in 1979 and 1982, being those 2 seasons. He was beset by knee and shoulder injuries to go alongside with numerous concussions. Kramer had knee and shoulder injuries, multiple concussions, and a 1987 preseason spine injury that he had been quoted as having said, basically pretty much ended my career. Even so, he was able to cement himself in Viking lore during his time here. In the 1980 season, Kramer would go 8-7 as a starter, leading the team back to the playoffs for the first time since 1978. Kramer saved his best for near last in that season. Facing the Cleveland Browns, he would go on to take part in one of the more iconic moments for the Vikings, as he threw a game-winning Hail Mary touchdown pass with 6 seconds left. They had trailed 23-9 in the fourth quarter, but Kramer threw 3 touchdowns in that quarter, including 2 of those to Ahmad Rashad late in the quarter. On the final play of the game, Rashad was clustered in a group of Browns defenders, but managed to catch the ball and carry himself into the end zone. The play, known as Miracle at the Met, clinched the division title for the Vikings. Kramer had his best game to that point, throwing 38 of 49 for 456 yards with 4 touchdowns. He is still the only quarterback for the Vikings to throw for over 450 yards in one game. Kramer enjoyed his last flash of brilliance in 1986, 1 year after yours truly was born. He went 7-6 in his 13 starts while throwing for 3,000 yards with 24 touchdowns to 10 interceptions while leading the league in a passer rating of 92.6. Kramer had his highlight day on September 28th, 1986, as he torched the Green Bay Packers. He threw for 6 touchdown passes, with 4 of them being in the first quarter. On a 16 of 25 day for 241 yards, he was named to the Pro Bowl for the first and only time in his career, back when the Pro Bowl actually meant something.
Mm-hmm.
As well as winning Comeback Player of the Year that season, along with second-team All-Pro honors. It was the last season which featured Kramer as the primary starter for the Vikings, starting 13 games. He would then go on to some strange and odd seasons, splitting starts with Wade Wilson and other Joe Schmoes. His final appearance in a Vikings uniform was mop-up duty late in the playoff loss to San Francisco, where he went 9 of 19 for 110 yards and an interception in the 41-13 loss. He was released after that season. Kramer finished his time with the Vikings after 11 seasons with the team. It can be argued that 2-Minute Tommy was one of only 2 franchise quarterbacks to spend an extended period of time on this team. After leaving the Vikings, he spent 1 year with the Saints before retiring. TK spent the next 30 years down in Texas before moving back to his second home here in Minnesota. Tommy was voted one of the 50 greatest Vikings. Every time that he played, he left it all out in the field and gave it his all every snap that he was given. And for that, Tommy, you hold down this week's list of number 9s on Brunswick's best.
Absolutely.
Now, just for a rundown of his stats, Tommy had 3,651 passing attempts in the league. 2,012 of them were completions for a 55.1% completion percentage. He threw for 24,777 yards, with 159 touchdowns against 158 interceptions, with an overall passer rating of 72.8. Tommy, you had one hell of a good ride throughout your entire life, from high school until the final day of your NFL career. Hell of a story, Tommy, and very, in my opinion, movie-worthy.
And numbers-wise, second only to Fran Tarkenton in the franchise history, and in many of those categories. So,
and you know what? And the best thing about it is this dude is a great human being in general.
Oh, absolutely is.
So
does so much for the fans now. He does. Just randomly shows up at small town bars and things like that. Just to hang out with the fans and do autographs. And it is he is. There's not another dude like Tommy Kramer.
Right, and he doesn't hold himself to any standard, of saying I'm better than you because I did this or that.
No.
So he's very respectable and honestly one of the most underrated players in Minnesota Vikings history, in my opinion. Doesn't get talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, Tommy, we'll see ya. Skol.
All right. With that, don't forget, Vikings Uncensored Studio Show Friday at 6 p.m. Of course, again, next week, Rhinos Rants on Mondays, and we will do number 10 of Brunswick's Best next Wednesday. So make sure you stay tuned for all those shows. Join us on Friday. With that, we will see you all. Have a good night, everybody.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, it went well.